The wagon wheel cracked against a rock so hard that Garrett O'Brien thought her family's last chance at survival had just splintered into the Montana dust. She jumped down from the driver's seat, her worn skirts catching on the splintered wood, and surveyed the damage with a sinking heart that matched the setting sun bleeding across the horizon. Behind her in the wagon bed, her younger siblings huddled together, their faces gaunt and pale, their eyes too large in their small faces. Her mother lay wrapped in every blanket they owned, shivering with fever despite the summer heat still radiating from the ground. Her father had been dead 3 weeks now, buried in an unmarked grave somewhere back in Wyoming after the cholera took him. They had been heading to Butte, Montana, where her uncle supposedly ran a mining supply store, but that was still 2 days away. And now, they were stranded on this lonely stretch of road with nothing but hope and prayer to sustain them. Garrett knelt beside the broken wheel, running her fingers over the fracture. The wood had been dry and weak for weeks, and she had known this would happen eventually. She was 22 years old, and the weight of keeping her family alive pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. Her brother Samuel was 14, her sister Lily was 11, and the twins, Mary and Margaret, were only 8. Without the wagon, they would have to abandon most of their possessions and try to walk the remaining distance. But her mother could not walk, and carrying her would be impossible. The sound of hoofbeats made her stand quickly, her hand instinctively going to the rifle propped against the wagon. In these parts, a lone woman with children was easy prey for bandits and worse. But as the rider came into view, silhouetted against the dying light, something about his posture made her hesitate. He sat his horse like a man who belonged to the land itself, easy and natural, and when he drew closer, she could see he was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes that assessed the situation with quick intelligence. "Trouble with your wheel," he called out as he approached, keeping his hands visible and his movements slow and unthreatening. Garrett kept the rifle where it was but did not aim it. "The axle cracked. We are managing." The cowboy dismounted and walked his horse closer, stopping a respectful distance away. He was tall and lean, with the weathered look of a man who spent his days under the open sky. His clothes were dusty and worn but clean, and there was something about his face that suggested both kindness and sadness, as though he had known loss himself. "Name is Cole Kincaid," he said, tipping his hat. "I have a small ranch about 5 miles south of here. That wheel is beyond fixing out here, and night is coming on fast. These roads are not safe after dark." "We will be fine," Garrett said, though she knew it was a lie. Already the temperature was dropping, and her mother needed warmth and medicine. The children needed food. They had been rationing what little they had for days now. Cole looked at the wagon, at the pale faces peering out from the canvas cover, at Garrett herself with her proud stance and frightened eyes. He seemed to make a decision. "I have flour for a week and jerky for 3 days," he said quietly. "And a roof that does not leak. Your mother looks sick and those children look hungry. Let me help." Garrett felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. "We have no money to pay you." "Did I ask for money?" Cole's voice was gentle. "I know what it is to be alone and desperate. Let me hitch your wagon to my horse. My mare is strong. She can pull it to my place. The wheel will not matter for 5 miles if we go slow." She wanted to refuse. Pride demanded it. But when she looked back at her family, at Lily's hollow cheeks and her mother's feverish trembling, she knew she had no choice. "All right," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." Cole worked quickly and efficiently, using rope from his saddlebag to secure the broken wheel and then hitching his horse to the wagon. Garrett climbed back onto the driver's seat, and Cole walked alongside, leading his mare with steady reassurance. The sun finished its descent, and stars began to appear in the darkening sky, cold and distant and beautiful. The children had gone quiet in the back, and Garrett could hear her mother's labored breathing. "How long has she been sick?" Cole asked as they walked. 4 days. "It started as a cough, but now she has fever and chills. I do not know if it is pneumonia or something else. There is a doctor in Butt. I can ride there tomorrow and bring him back." Garrett glanced at him, surprised. "You would do that for strangers?" Cole was quiet for a moment. "My own family died 2 years ago. Diphtheria. My wife and our baby daughter. I could not save them. Maybe I can save yours." The pain in his voice was raw and real, and Garrett felt something shift in her chest. This man understood loss. He understood desperation. "I am sorry," she said softly. "So am I. Every day." They walked in silence after that, but it was a companionable silence, the kind that exists between two people who have both known grief. When they finally reached Cole's ranch, Garrett was surprised to see a sturdy cabin with a well-maintained barn and a corral where several horses stood watching their arrival with curious eyes. It was a small operation, but it was clearly run by someone who cared about his land. Cole helped Garrett's mother down from the wagon, carrying her into the cabin with surprising gentleness. He laid her on his own bed, and then went about building up the fire in the hearth. Garrett brought the children inside, and they stood in a small cluster, staring around at the simple but clean interior. There was a table with 4 chairs, a cooking area with a cast iron stove, shelves lined with supplies, and a few personal items that suggested Cole lived here alone. "Sit," Cole said, gesturing to the table. "All of you." The children looked at Garrett and she nodded. They sat, their movements slow and tired. Cole went to his supply shelf and pulled down a large cloth sack of flour, a tin of lard, a container of salt, and several long strips of dried jerky. Garrett watched as he laid it all out on the table, her throat tightening. "This flour should last me a week," Cole said, measuring out portions. "And this jerky should last 3 days. But tonight we are going to share it all." "You cannot do that," Garrett protested. "That is your food. You will have nothing left." Cole looked at her steadily. "I can hunt, I can fish, I have chickens that lay eggs. Your family is starving. Take it." He set to work making biscuits, his hands moving with practiced ease. He mixed flour and lard and salt, added water from a bucket by the door, and soon had dough rolled out and cut into rounds. These he placed in a pan and set in the oven to bake. The smell that filled the cabin was heavenly, and Garrett saw Lily actually start to cry from the sheer anticipation of real food. While the biscuits baked, Cole handed out strips of jerky to each child. "Chew it slow," he instructed. "Your stomachs are not used to food. If you eat too fast, you will get sick." Samuel, who had been silent since their father died, spoke for the first time in days. "Thank you, sir." Cole smiled at him. "You are welcome, son. What is your name?" "Samuel O'Brien." "This is my sister Garrett, and these are my sisters Lily, Mary, and Margaret. Our mother is Catherine." "Good strong names," Cole said. He pulled the biscuits from the oven, golden and perfect, and set them on the table. "Let them cool a minute, then you can have one each. Tomorrow I will make a proper breakfast with eggs and bacon." Garrett felt tears sliding down her cheeks, and she could not stop them. This stranger was giving them everything he had, asking nothing in return, and she did not know how to process such kindness. Cole saw her crying and handed her a handkerchief. "It is all right," he said quietly. "You have been strong for a long time. You are allowed to break a little." She took the handkerchief and wiped her eyes, embarrassed but grateful. The children ate their biscuits slowly, savoring every bite, and Garrett made sure her mother got some food and water as well. Catherine was too sick to eat much, but she managed a few bites of biscuit soaked in water, and her eyes when she looked at Garrett were filled with gratitude and relief. After the meal, Cole laid out bedrolls on the floor for the children, and Garrett insisted on sleeping beside her mother to tend to her during the night. Cole took his own bedroll and made a place by the fire, refusing to let Garrett feel guilty about taking his bed. That night, Garrett lay awake listening to her siblings breathe deeply in real sleep for the first time in weeks, and she watched the firelight play across Cole's sleeping form. He had saved them. This stranger had appeared on the road like an answer to a prayer she had not even known how to form, and he had given them shelter and food and kindness. She did not understand it, but she was grateful beyond words. In the morning, she woke to find Cole already up and making breakfast as promised. The smell of frying bacon and eggs filled the cabin, and the children woke with smiles on their faces. Garrett checked her mother and found her fever had broken during the night. Catherine was weak but lucid, and she smiled at Garrett with tears in her eyes. "We made it," she whispered. "We are going to be all right." Garrett helped her mother sit up and drink some water, then went to help Cole with breakfast. He had set the table with plates and forks and was dishing out generous portions of eggs and bacon. "Your mother looks better," he observed. The fever broke. "I think the rest and warmth helped." Garrett hesitated, then added, "I do not know how to thank you." "You do not have to thank me. Just seeing those children smile is enough." Cole set a plate in front of her. "Eat. You need your strength too." The family ate together around Cole's table, and for the first time since her father had died, Garrett felt something like hope. After breakfast, Cole saddled a fresh horse and prepared to ride to Butte to fetch the doctor. "I will be back before dark," he promised. "There is food in the larder, and the well is just outside. Make yourselves at home." He rode off at a gallop, and Garrett spent the day cleaning the cabin and caring for her family. Her mother rested, and the children explored the area around the cabin, finding joy in simple things like watching the chickens peck in the yard and petting the horses. Garrett found herself thinking about Cole constantly, wondering about the life he had lived, the family he had lost, the loneliness that must fill this cabin when he was alone. She found a trunk in the corner that held folded clothes, small baby clothes, and a woman's dress. His wife and daughter. The pain of their loss must have been unbearable, yet he had still found the generosity to help strangers. What kind of man did that? Cole returned as the sun was setting, the doctor riding beside him. Dr. Harrison was an older man with kind eyes and a black medical bag. He examined Catherine thoroughly, listened to her lungs, checked her pulse, and finally pronounced that she had pneumonia but was already on the mend. "Keep her warm and rested," he instructed. "Give her plenty of fluids and light foods. She should be fully recovered in a week or two." He turned to Cole. "You did the right thing bringing her inside. Another night in that wagon and she might not have made it." Cole paid the doctor from his own pocket, refusing to let Garrett even discuss repayment. After the doctor left, Cole made dinner, a simple stew with vegetables from his garden and a rabbit he had shot on his way back from town. They ate together again, and the cabin felt warm and alive in a way Garrett suspected it had not felt since Cole's family died. That night, after the children were asleep and Catherine was resting comfortably, Garrett and Cole sat by the fire together. The silence between them was comfortable but charged with something neither of them wanted to name yet. "You saved our lives," Garrett said finally. "I need you to know that. Without you, we would have died out there." Cole stared into the fire. "I had to help. After I lost Mary and Emma, I thought about dying myself. For months, I went through the motions of living but felt nothing. Then one day I realized that they would not want me to waste the life I still had. They would want me to do good where I could, to help where I was able. So that is what I try to do." "Mary and Emma," Garrett repeated softly. "Those are beautiful names. Mary was my wife. Emma was our daughter. She was 6 months old when the sickness took her. Mary died trying to save her, and then I was alone." Cole's voice broke slightly, and Garrett saw tears on his cheeks. "I buried them on the hill behind the barn. Sometimes I go up there and talk to them. It helps." Without thinking, Garrett reached out and took his hand. His fingers were calloused and strong, and they closed around hers with a grip that suggested he needed the connection as much as she did. "My father died of cholera," Garrett said. "We buried him fast because we were afraid of contagion. I did not even get to say goodbye properly. One day he was teaching Samuel to fish, and 3 days later he was gone. It does not seem real. Death never does, even when you watch it happen." They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, sharing the silence of grief. Finally, Cole stood and banked the fire for the night. "You should sleep," he said gently. "Tomorrow I will see about fixing that wagon wheel." Over the next several days, a routine developed. Cole worked on repairing the wagon wheel, crafting a new one from wood he had stored in the barn. Garrett helped around the cabin, cooking and cleaning and caring for her family. The children thrived under the regular meals and safe shelter, their cheeks filling out and their laughter returning. Catherine grew stronger each day, able to sit up and eventually walk around the cabin with Garrett's support. Garrett found herself watching Cole more and more. She noticed the way he was patient with Samuel, teaching the boy how to properly care for horses and mend tack. She saw how gently he spoke to Lily, who had been so quiet since their father's death, coaxing smiles from her with silly stories and magic tricks involving coins. She watched him lift the twins onto his shoulders so they could see a bird's nest in the eaves of the barn, and she saw the bittersweet look in his eyes as he did so, knowing he was thinking of the daughter he would never watch grow up. And she noticed the way he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention. His eyes would linger on her face, soft and wondering, as though he could not quite believe she was real. It made her heart beat faster, made her aware of herself in ways she had not been in years. She had been so focused on survival that she had forgotten what it felt like to be seen as a woman rather than just a caretaker and provider. One evening, after the children were in bed and Catherine was sleeping peacefully, Cole invited Garrett to walk with him. They strolled toward the hill behind the barn, and Garrett realized where they were going. 2 simple wooden crosses marked the graves of Mary and Emma Kincaid, and wildflowers grew thick around them. "I come here most evenings," Cole said. "It makes me feel close to them still." Garrett stood beside him, looking at the crosses. "They were lucky to have you," she said. "I can tell you loved them very much. I did. I do. But loving someone who is gone is different from loving someone who is here. I thought my heart died with them, but lately I have been feeling it wake up again, and it frightens me." Garrett turned to look at him and found him already looking at her. The sun was setting behind them, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and in that golden light, Cole looked young and vulnerable and heartbreakingly handsome. "I understand," Garrett said softly. "After my father died, I told myself I could not afford to feel anything except determination. If I let myself feel the grief, it would drown me, and my family needed me to be strong. But being here, being safe, it has allowed me to feel again, and it is overwhelming." "Garrett," Cole said, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. "I do not want to presume anything, and I know you have your family to think of, but I need to tell you that having you here has brought life back into this house. I wake up in the morning, and there is a reason to get up. I hear your voice and the children's laughter, and it fills spaces inside me that have been empty for so long." Her breath caught in her throat. "Cole, we have only known each other a week. I know. And maybe it is too soon and maybe I am a fool, but I also know that life is short and uncertain. I wasted months after Mary died, and I will not waste any more time being afraid to live. He took both her hands in his. I am not asking you to make any promises. I am just asking if you feel even a fraction of what I feel. Garrett looked into his eyes and saw hope and fear and longing all mixed together. She thought about the way he had given his last food to her family, the way he had ridden through the night to fetch a doctor, the way he had made her siblings feel safe and cared for. She thought about his kindness and his strength, and the way her heart raced whenever he was near. I feel it, she whispered. I feel it so much it scares me. Cole smiled then, a real smile that transformed his whole face, and he pulled her into his arms. Garrett went willingly, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady thump of his heartbeat. They stood like that as the sun set completely, and stars began to appear overhead. Two people who had both known loss learning to hope again. The next week passed in a haze of growing affection and tentative courtship. Cole finished repairing the wagon wheel, but neither he nor Garrett spoke about the O'Brien family leaving. Catherine noticed the way her daughter looked at the young rancher, and she approved. One afternoon she called Garrett over to the bed where she was resting. "He is a good man," Catherine said without preamble. "Your father would have liked him." Garrett blushed. "Mama, we have barely known him 2 weeks. I knew your father for 3 days before I knew I would marry him." "Time is not what matters. Character is." Catherine took her daughter's hand. "You have carried this family since your father died. You have been stronger than anyone should have to be, but you do not have to carry us alone anymore. Cole is offering to help, not just now but permanently. I see it in the way he looks at you. What about Uncle in Butt? We were going to him for help." Catherine sighed. "Garrett, I have not heard from my brother in 3 years. I do not even know if he is still there. I was taking us to Butt because I had nowhere else to go. But here we have safety and kindness and a man who genuinely cares about our well-being. That is more than I dared hope for." Garrett felt tears welling up again. "I think I love him, Mama. Is that crazy?" "No, sweetheart. That is blessed." That evening, Cole asked Garrett to walk with him again. This time they headed away from the graves and toward a small creek that ran through his property. The water burbled over rocks, and frogs sang in the gathering darkness. Cole led her to a flat rock by the water's edge, and they sat down together. "Your wagon is fixed," Cole said. "You could leave tomorrow if you wanted." Garrett's heart clenched. "Is that what you want?" "No." The word came out fierce and immediate. "That is the last thing I want, but I will not keep you here if you have somewhere else you need to be." "We were heading to Butt because my mother's brother supposedly lives there. But we have not heard from him in years, and even if he is there, I do not know if he would help us. We have nothing, Cole. No money, no prospects, no home. I have been trying to figure out what we would do when we got to Butt, and I have no answers." Cole turned to face her fully. "Then stay here. Marry me. Let me take care of you and your family. This ranch is small, but it is profitable enough to support all of us. Samuel is already learning to be a fine rancher, and the girls are happy here. Your mother is getting well. We could build a good life together." Garrett stared at him. "Cole, are you actually proposing?" "Yes." "I know it is fast, and I know we are still learning about each other, but I also know that you are the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing I think about before I sleep. I know that your laughter makes this cabin feel like a home again. I know that when I look at you, I see a future I thought I had lost forever." He took her hands again. "I am not asking you to replace Mary. No one could. But I am asking you to build something new with me, something that honors both of our pasts while reaching toward a better future." Garrett felt tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Cole pulled her into his arms and kissed her, a gentle kiss that tasted of hope and promise and new beginnings. Garrett kissed him back, her hands coming up to tangle in his hair, and for the first time since her father had died, she felt truly safe. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless and smiling. "I will ride to Butte tomorrow and arrange for a preacher," Cole said. "We can be married by the end of the week if you want." "I want," Garrett said firmly. They walked back to the cabin hand in hand, and when they entered, the children immediately noticed the change in both of them. Lily ran to Garrett, her eyes wide. "Are you going to marry Cole?" she asked. Garrett knelt down and hugged her sister. "Yes, I am. How do you feel about that?" Lily's face split into a huge grin. "I think it is wonderful. Can I call him Papa?" Cole, who had been standing nearby, looked stricken with emotion. "I would be honored," he managed to say. Samuel came over and extended his hand to Cole, man to man. "You will take care of my sister, with my life," Cole promised, shaking the boy's hand solemnly. The twins were less articulated but no less enthusiastic, dancing around the cabin singing about a wedding. Catherine watched from the bed with tears of joy in her eyes, and when Cole approached her, she took his hand. "Thank you for saving my family," she said, "and thank you for loving my daughter. You are a blessing." "She is the blessing," Cole replied. "All of you are." True to his word, Cole rode to Butte the next morning and returned with news that Pastor Williams would come to the ranch in 4 days to perform a wedding ceremony. Garrett spent the intervening time in a state of happy anxiety. She had never expected to find love like this, especially not in the middle of grief and struggle. Yet here it was, real and solid and true. Cole brought fabric from town, and Catherine, who was now strong enough to sit up for extended periods, helped Garrett sew a simple wedding dress. It was nothing fancy, just a blue cotton dress with lace at the collar, but Garrett thought it was the most beautiful thing she had ever worn. Lily and the twins picked wildflowers from the hillside and wove them into crowns for themselves and a bouquet for Garrett. On the day of the wedding, Pastor Williams arrived along with a few of Cole's neighbors who had become friends over the years. The ceremony was held outside under the big cottonwood tree near the house, with the mountains rising in the distance and the sun shining warm and golden overhead. Garrett stood beside Cole, her hand in his, and listened as the pastor spoke about love and commitment and faithfulness. When it came time for vows, Cole spoke first, his voice steady and sure. "Garrett, when I found you on that road with your broken wagon and your frightened family, I thought I was just helping a stranger. I did not know I was meeting the woman who would save me in return. You have brought joy back into my life, and I promise to spend every day making sure you never regret choosing me. I will protect you and your family. I will work hard to provide for us, and I will love you with everything I have until the day I die." Garrett was crying openly now, but they were happy tears. "Cole, I do not have pretty words, but I have a full heart. You appeared when we needed you most, and you gave us everything without asking for anything in return. That is the kind of man you are, and that is why I love you. I promise to stand beside you, to work with you, to build a life with you that honors both of our pasts while creating something beautiful and new. You are my blessing, and I will treasure you always." Pastor Williams smiled. "By the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Cole, you may kiss your bride." Cole did, pulling Garrett close and kissing her thoroughly while their small audience cheered. When they broke apart, both of them were laughing through tears, and Garrett felt a joy so complete it was almost painful. The celebration that followed was simple but heartfelt. The neighbors had brought food to share, and tables were set up outside laden with roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables, and pies. Cole had even managed to acquire a small wedding cake from the baker in Butt, and the children were beside themselves with excitement. Music was provided by a neighbor who played the fiddle, and Cole danced with Garrett as the sun set, their bodies moving together in perfect rhythm. "Happy," he murmured into her ear. "Happier than I knew was possible," she replied. That night, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Cole carried Garrett over the threshold of what was now their home together. He had moved his things out of the bedroom and made it beautiful for her, with fresh linens on the bed and candles burning on the dresser. They came together gently and slowly, learning each other's bodies with tenderness and care, and afterward they lay tangled together in the darkness, whispering hopes and dreams and promises. "I never thought I would feel this way again," Cole said, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "I thought that part of my life was over." "I never thought I would feel this way at all," Garrett replied. "I always assumed I would marry eventually, but I thought it would be practical, something arranged or convenient. I did not know it could be like this." "Like what?" "Like I found a piece of myself I did not know was missing." Cole kissed her forehead. "I know exactly what you mean." The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Garrett settled into her role as Cole's wife and found she loved it more than she ever expected. She took over management of the household, improving systems and organizing supplies with the same determined efficiency she had used to keep her family alive on the trail. Cole taught her to ride, and she became proficient enough to help him with the horses and cattle. Samuel continued to learn ranching under Cole's patient instruction, growing taller and more confident with each passing day. Lily discovered a talent for cooking and spent hours in the kitchen with Garrett, creating meals that brought everyone to the table with eager anticipation. The twins thrived in the open spaces of the ranch, running wild and free and happy. Catherine recovered completely from her pneumonia and found a new purpose in helping care for the household. She and Cole developed a warm relationship built on mutual respect, and she often told Garrett how grateful she was that her daughter had found such a good man. As autumn approached, Garrett realized she was pregnant. The knowledge filled her with both joy and fear. She knew Cole would be happy, but she also knew the baby would remind him of Emma, the daughter he had lost. One evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, she gathered her courage and told him, "Cole, I need to tell you something." He looked up from the harness he was mending, his eyes alert to the seriousness in her tone. "What is it?" "I am going to have a baby." For a moment, Cole just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then his face crumpled and he dropped the harness and crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms and burying his face in her neck. She felt his shoulders shake and realized he was crying. "Cole," she said uncertainly, "are you all right?" "I am more than all right," he managed to say through his tears. "I am overwhelmed. Garrett, I thought I would never have another child. After Emma died, I told myself it was not meant to be, that I would live the rest of my life alone. And now I have you and your whole family and a baby coming. It is more blessing than I know what to do with." Garrett held him tightly, her own tears flowing freely. "I was afraid it would hurt you, would remind you too much of Emma." Cole pulled back so he could look at her face. "It does remind me of her, but not in a painful way. In a way that feels like she is giving me her blessing to be happy again, to love again, to be a father again. I will always miss her and Mary, but I have room in my heart for more love, not less." Their baby was born the following May, a healthy boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's determination. They named him Christopher James Kincaid, and he was welcomed into a household full of love and laughter. Cole was a devoted father, doting on the baby while also making sure Samuel and the girls never felt neglected. Garrett marveled at his capacity for love, the way he could give so much of himself without ever seeming depleted. Christopher's birth seemed to complete the family in a way none of them had anticipated. Samuel, now 15, was old enough to take on real responsibility on the ranch, and he worked alongside Cole with growing skill and confidence. Lily, at 12, had become a talented cook and baker, often selling her goods in Butte to bring in extra income. The twins, now 9, were inseparable and fearless, climbing trees and riding horses bareback, and generally keeping everyone entertained with their antics. Catherine, healthy and content, ruled the household with gentle authority and spent hours rocking her grandson while Garrett worked. 2 years later, Garrett gave birth to a daughter they named Grace Catherine Kincaid. She had Cole's eyes and Garrett's stubborn chin, and she wrapped her father around her tiny finger from the moment she was born. Cole would sit for hours just holding her, tears streaming down his face, thanking God for the second chance at fatherhood he had never expected. Life on the ranch was not always easy. There were droughts that tested their resources, harsh winters that required every ounce of endurance they possessed, and market fluctuations that strained their finances. But through it all, the family remained strong and united. Cole and Garrett faced every challenge together, their love deepening with each obstacle they overcame. One evening, 5 years after they had married, Garrett and Cole climbed the hill behind the barn to visit Mary and Emma's graves. It had become a ritual they shared, a way to honor Cole's past while celebrating his present. The wildflowers were in full bloom, and the crosses stood tall against the darkening sky. "You think they know?" Garrett asked, taking Cole's hand. "Do you think Mary and Emma know how happy we are?" Cole considered the question seriously. "I think if there is any way for them to know, they do, and I think they are glad. Mary loved me too much to want me to spend my life alone and grieving. She would have wanted exactly this for me." "I hope so," Garrett said. "Because I cannot imagine my life without you." Cole pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "That day I found you on the road with your broken wagon. I thought I was saving you. But you saved me just as much, maybe more. You gave me a reason to live again, to hope again, to love again." "We saved each other," Garrett said firmly. "And we will keep saving each other every day for the rest of our lives." They stood on the hill as the stars came out, two people who had found each other in the darkest moments of their lives and built something beautiful from the ashes of their grief. Below them, the ranch spread out in the gathering darkness, the lights from the cabin windows glowing warm and welcoming. Inside, their children were laughing and Catherine was singing an old lullaby, and everything was exactly as it should be. 10 years after that first meeting on the dusty Montana road, Cole and Garrett Kincaid sat on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching the sun set over land they now owned outright. Samuel, now 24, ran a successful horse breeding operation on the eastern section of the property and had recently married a sweet girl from Butte. Lily, 21, had married the local school teacher and lived in town, though she visited often with her 2 young children. The twins, 18, were both preparing to attend a teacher's college in Helena, determined to educate the children of Montana Territory. Christopher, now 9, was already a skilled rider and rancher, taking after his father in every way. Grace, 7, was learning to read and write with her grandmother's patient instruction, showing a scholarly aptitude that suggested she might become a teacher like her aunts. Catherine, now in her early 50s, remained healthy and active, serving as the family matriarch and beloved grandmother. She often told Garrett that the day their wagon wheel broke on that lonely road was the day God intervened to save them all, and Garrett could not disagree. "You ever regret it?" Garrett asked Cole one evening as they rocked together on the porch, watching their children play in the yard. "Do you ever wish you had stayed alone, kept your grief intact?" Cole looked at her with such love and tenderness that it still took her breath away even after all these years. "Never. Not for a single moment. You and this family are the greatest gifts I have ever received. Every day I wake up grateful that I decided to ride down that particular road at that particular time. I had flour for a week and jerky for 3 days," Garrett said softly, remembering. "And you split it all with my family that night. You gave us everything you had without hesitation." "And you gave me back my life," Cole replied. "I think that was a more than fair trade." Garrett leaned her head on his shoulder, watching as Christopher chased Grace around the yard while the chickens scattered in their wake. The mountains rose in the distance, purple and gold in the fading light, and the air smelled of pine and sage and home. She thought about that terrified girl she had been, standing beside a broken wagon with no hope and no options, and she marveled at how far they had all come. "I love you," she said, simple and true. "I love you too," Cole replied, kissing her temple. "Forever." As the stars began to appear overhead and the children were called in for dinner, Cole and Garrett remained on the porch for a few more minutes, savoring the peace and contentment that came from a life well lived and a love well earned. They had both known loss and grief and desperation, but they had found each other in the darkness and built something radiant and enduring. Their love story had begun with an act of generosity on a dusty road, and it would continue for all the years they had left, a testament to the power of kindness and the resilience of the human heart. Inside the house, the family gathered around the dinner table, passing plates and sharing stories of the day's adventures. Catherine said grace, thanking God for the blessings they had received and the love that bound them together. As they ate and laughed and planned for tomorrow, Cole caught Garrett's eye across the table and she smiled back. And in that moment, everything was perfect. The years continued to roll by like the seasons, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. The ranch prospered under Cole's steady management and Garrett's tireless work. They expanded their herd, bought adjoining land from a retiring neighbor, and became one of the most respected ranching families in the region. Their success was not just measured in cattle and acreage, but in the quality of their relationships and the strength of their family bonds. Samuel proved to be a brilliant horseman, developing a breeding program that produced some of the finest horses in Montana. His wife Eleanor was a perfect match for him, strong and practical and kind, and she gave them 3 grandchildren in rapid succession. Cole loved being a grandfather, teaching the little ones to ride and telling them stories of the old days, though he was careful to edit out the sadder parts of his history until they were old enough to understand. Lily's husband, Thomas, was promoted to school superintendent, and they moved into a larger house in Butte. Lily continued her baking business, supplying several restaurants and hotels with her goods, and her children grew up knowing they were loved and valued. She often credited her sister Garrett and brother-in-law Cole with giving her the stability she needed to become the woman she was, and she made sure her own children understood the importance of kindness to strangers and those in need. Mary and Margaret, the twins, did indeed become teachers after completing their education. Mary taught in a one-room schoolhouse near the ranch, while Margaret took a position in Helena teaching at a girls' academy. Both remained close despite the distance, visiting each other often and maintaining the unbreakable bond they had shared since birth. They never forgot the man who had saved their family when they were just children, and both named their firstborn sons Cole in his honor. Christopher grew into a man who was the perfect blend of both his parents. He had Cole's quiet strength and easy way with animals, but also Garrett's fierce determination and organizational skills. When he turned 18, Cole made him a full partner in the ranch operations, recognizing that the boy had earned it through years of hard work and dedication. Christopher married at 22, choosing a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread, and they built a house on the western section of the property, keeping the family close while allowing for independence and growth. Grace, the baby of the family, was the scholar they had all suspected she would be. She devoured books with the same enthusiasm most children reserved for candy, and by the time she was 12, she was reading at a college level. Cole and Garrett encouraged her education, sending her to the best schools they could afford and supporting her dream of becoming a writer. She eventually wrote a series of novels based loosely on the history of Montana Territory, and many readers claimed they could see her own family's story woven into the narratives, though Grace always smiled mysteriously when asked and never confirmed or denied. Catherine lived to see all of her grandchildren grown and many of her great-grandchildren born. She died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 68, surrounded by family in the ranch house that had become her true home. Her passing was mourned deeply but also celebrated, for she had lived a full and happy life after being saved from death on that dusty road so many years before. Cole and Garrett buried her on the hillside near Mary and Emma, knowing that Catherine would have appreciated the company and the view. As Cole and Garrett entered their own later years, they found themselves reflecting more and more on the improbable series of events that had brought them together. Cole's hair turned silver, and his face became lined with age, but his eyes remained the same warm brown that had first captivated Garrett. Garrett's own hair showed threads of white, and her hands bore the calluses of a lifetime of work, but she remained beautiful to Cole, more so than ever because of the life they had built together. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. All of the children and grandchildren came, filling the house with noise and laughter and love. During the dinner, Samuel stood to make a toast. "To my sister and my second father," he said, raising his glass. 25 years ago, you two found each other on a broken road, and you built something that has blessed all of our lives. Cole, you saved our family when we had nothing and no one. You gave us food when you were hungry yourself, shelter when we were homeless, and love when we were lost. You taught me to be a man, and you showed all of us what true kindness looks like. Garrett, you were our rock when Papa died, and you led us to safety even when you must have been terrified yourself. Together, you have created a legacy that will last for generations. We love you both, and we thank God for the day that wagon wheel broke." There was not a dry eye in the room as everyone raised their glasses and drank to the couple who had given them all so much. Cole and Garrett held hands under the table, their fingers intertwined as they had been so many times over the years, and they looked around at the faces of their family with overwhelming gratitude. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed or headed back to their own homes, Cole and Garrett walked up the hillside one more time. The moon was full and bright, illuminating the 4 graves that now stood there: Mary and Emma Kincaid and Garrett O'Brien. They stood in silence for a moment, paying their respects. "I hope I have lived a life that would make them proud," Cole said quietly. "Mary and Emma, I mean. I hope they know I never forgot them, even while building a new life." "They know," Garrett said with certainty, "and they are proud." "How could they not be? You took your grief and turned it into something beautiful. You saved a family that was dying, and you gave them a future. That is the best memorial anyone could ask for." Cole pulled her close, and they stood together in the moonlight, Two people who had found each other against all odds and made something lasting from their shared pain and hope. "You remember what I said that first night?" Cole asked. "When I found you on the road. You said you had flour for a week and jerky for 3 days," Garrett replied. "And you split it all with my family that night." "I had no idea that decision would change my entire life," Cole said wonderingly. "If I had ridden a different road or come by an hour later or decided not to stop, everything would be different. We would never have met. This family would not exist. It is humbling to think how much can hinge on one small choice." "It was not a small choice," Garrett corrected him. "It was the choice of a good man who put others before himself. That is not small. That is everything." They made their way back down the hillside, their steps slower than they had been in their youth but no less sure. The ranch house glowed with lamplight, and through the windows they could see their family settling in for the night. Christopher and his wife were reading to their children in the parlor. Grace was at the kitchen table, writing in one of her endless notebooks. Samuel and Alina were helping with the dishes, laughing about something. "We built this," Garrett said softly, "all of this from nothing." "Not from nothing," Cole corrected. "From love, from kindness, from a willingness to take a chance on something better." They entered the house together, greeted by the warmth and light and love that they had cultivated over 25 years of marriage. As they prepared for bed that night, Garrett watched Cole move about the room and felt her heart swell with affection and gratitude. This man who had appeared like an angel on that desperate day had given her everything: safety, love, family, home. And she had given him reason to live again, purpose to go on, joy to replace his grief. "Thank you," she said suddenly. Cole turned to her, puzzled. "For what?" "For stopping that day, for helping us, for loving me, for all of it." Cole crossed the room and took her in his arms, holding her close. "Thank you for letting me. Thank you for seeing past my grief to the man I could still be. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for loving me even when I was not sure I deserved it." "You have always deserved it," Garrett said fiercely. "Always." They lay down together in the bed they had shared for 25 years, their bodies fitting together with the ease of long practice. As Garrett drifted off to sleep, she thought about that girl on the broken road, and she wished she could tell her that everything would be all right. That help was coming. That love was waiting. That the man riding toward her on a dusty horse would become her entire world. The years continued their relentless march. Cole and Garrett grew older but never apart. They faced the usual challenges of aging with grace and humor, supporting each other through illness and injury and loss. When Cole's back gave him trouble, Garrett was there with liniment and gentle hands. When Garrett's eyes grew weak, Cole read to her by lamplight every evening, his voice still strong and warm. Their grandchildren grew up hearing stories of how Grandpa Cole had saved Grandma Garrett's family, how he had given them his last food and opened his home to strangers. Those stories became family legend, passed down through generations as an example of what it meant to be truly good, truly kind, truly generous. Cole Kincaid died at the age of 73, after a brief illness that even his strong constitution could not fight off. He passed peacefully in his sleep, Garrett beside him holding his hand as she had held it so many times before. His last words to her were simple: "Thank you for 28 beautiful years. Thank you for saving me." The funeral was attended by what seemed like half of Montana territory. Ranchers and shopkeepers, teachers and preachers, friends and family, all came to pay their respects to a man who had touched countless lives with his quiet kindness and steady integrity. Garrett stood beside the grave, supported by her children and grandchildren, and spoke of the man she had loved. "Cole Kincaid was the best man I ever knew," she said, her voice clear despite her tears. He saved my family when we had nothing. He loved me when I felt unlovable. He built a legacy of kindness and generosity that will outlive all of us. If you want to honor his memory, be kind to strangers. Help where you can. Love without reservation. That is what he would want. They buried him on the hillside next to Mary and Emma and Catherine, and Garrett knew he would have approved. His two families, united in death as they had been separated in life. Garrett lived another 7 years after Cole's death. She remained active and engaged, dividing her time between her children's homes and the ranch that Christopher now ran. She took great joy in her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories of their grandfather and making sure they understood the kind of man he had been. On the anniversary of the day she had met Cole, Garrett would climb the hillside to visit his grave. She would sit on the grass, talking to him as though he could hear, sharing news of the family and confessing how much she missed him. "I dream about you sometimes," she told him one warm June afternoon. "I dream we are young again, standing by that broken wagon and you are offering to help. And I always say yes, even though I know what will come. The joy and the sorrow, the building and the losing. I say yes because loving you was worth everything." Garrett O'Brien Kincaid died peacefully at the age of 77, surrounded by 3 generations of descendants. Her last conscious thoughts were of Cole, of that first night when he had given his last food to feed her starving family, and of all the years of love and laughter that had followed. As she drew her final breath, she could have sworn she felt his hand take hers, strong and warm, leading her forward into whatever came next. They buried her beside Cole on the hillside, and the entire family gathered to say goodbye. Samuel, now 55 and white-haired himself, stood to speak at the graveside. "My sister saved our lives more times than I can count," he said. "But I think her greatest accomplishment was recognizing that sometimes being saved means accepting help from others." She could have refused Cole's offer that night. Pride might have made her try to push on alone, but she accepted his kindness, and from that acceptance came all of this. He gestured to the assembled family, dozens of people whose existence stemmed from that one decision. "We are all here because she said yes to help, yes to love, yes to building something new from the ashes of loss. That is her legacy, and we will carry it forward." The family remained close in the years that followed, bound by the story of how it all began. The tale of the cowboy who gave his last food to a family of strangers, and the woman who gave him back his reason to live, became a treasured family history. It was told and retold, embellished and preserved, until it took on an almost mythic quality. But those who had been there, who remembered Cole and Garrett in life, knew that the reality had been even more beautiful than the legend. They remembered the way Cole looked at Garrett as though she hung the moon. They remembered the way Garrett's face would soften when Cole entered a room. They remembered the partnership of equals, the love that grew deeper with each passing year, the family that was built on foundations of kindness and generosity. The ranch remained in the family for generations, passed down from Christopher to his children and their children after them. The hillside where Cole and Garrett and their loved ones were buried became a family shrine, carefully maintained and visited regularly. And every year on the anniversary of Cole and Garrett's meeting, the family would gather there to share the story one more time, making sure the younger generations understood where they came from and what values they were expected to uphold. The legacy of that single act of kindness, of a cowboy who shared his last food with strangers, rippled forward through time, touching lives and shaping destinies in ways that Cole and Garrett could never have imagined. It proved that sometimes the smallest gestures can have the greatest impact, that love can grow from the most unlikely beginnings, And that hope is never truly lost as long as there are good people in the world willing to help those in need. And so the story lived on, a testament to the power of compassion and the enduring nature of true love, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from our darkest moments, and that the decision to help a stranger might just change everything.